Okay, we need to talk real quick. I'm starting to think Kizaru is him. And here's why. He's really the last of the admirals to really show you what he's got, even after some admirals have been replaced due to being fired and promoted. When you look back at One Piece, Aki Inu was very impressive in his showing against Whitebeard, and Kuzan was very impressive in his showing against Garp. Here's the problem, though. Both of them kinda got folded half the fight by two old men over the hill. Okay, even though Garp is the hero and Whitebeard was the strongest man in the world, still the fact that you are untouchable men with the powers of the most extreme variants of heat and cold at your disposal, you couldn't put these two old geezers down easily. I don't really care about the legendary status or the hockey. You're young, spry, and in your prime, and you couldn't do it. Aki Inu didn't get the kill shot on Whitebeard. Kuzan with Garp, it's kind of unfair because technically, Kuzan, you had half of a Yonko crew's commanders on your side, plus the entirety of an island, because the whole thing with Pyro Island, it was basically a reverse Marine Force situation. The Marines attacking a Yonko base instead of a Yonko attacking a Marine base. And Whitebeard kind of folded the entirety of the Marines, well, him and the boys, because ooh-wee, the showing on the opposite spectrum of things was not a fold in the least. The Marines, by all intents and purposes, got folded. Kizaru got a boo-boo on his hand, and Kuzan got to work out a little bit. And that's it. Oh, well then, you have Shiryu. Shiryu got busted in the face one time and he was fine. So I don't know what the Marines did in that situation. I don't know if I could call that a W. I would say the Marines have a bright future because Prince Groose, Helmeppo, and Kobe are very valuable assets. But oh boy. I mean, I think Garp is out of his prime for sure. And Prime Garp and Prime Whitebeard are totally different beasts. But then when you look at Green Bull and Fujitora, both of them are kind of buffoons and to a cartoon-like degree, because Green Bull has all the promise in the world, but he's too busy, I guess, harping over his mysterious past and climbing the corporate ladder to kiss the boots of a dog, basically, which is very funny that a dog has a dog. I find that hilarious. So while Green Bull is too busy licking Aki Inu's boots in order to get an attaboy from him, presumably, which is very interesting, Fujitora simply is in the wrong business because he is too much of a goody two-shoes. He kind of is one of the only true Marines, which is why he is of no use to Aki Inu, because Aki Inu does not need pacifists unless they're pacifistas. Very funny. But yeah, he doesn't do his job. He would rather do things the right way. And the Marines, well, Aki Inu's Marines, are not interested in doing things the right way. But looking at Aki Inu, I don't know. I don't know. But then I'm reminded, look at Kizaru in 1093. Kizaru is him. And the reason why I say Kizaru is him, he's the only Logia that can make duplicates of himself. He can make a whole army of himself, supposedly with the same abilities that he has normally. So what are we doing here? And the fact that he's never serious, the man's about to be thrown into the ocean. It's like, oh no. Well, time to get some exercise. He zips back, keeps Luffy busy with shadow clones, or I guess light clones, while he's trying to carry out the mission objective. He's fighting this cartoon character and is unfazed. Everybody else got flustered. Lucy said, much like in the first fight during Ennis Lobby, oh, I'm about to pass out. I can't take it. He's cheating. But I love Lucy. Lucy's just petty. And now he's busy dealing with the underlings of a Yonko and Zoro, though. I mean, Zoro is quite cool. I'm not saying that to be derogatory, but Zoro is the number 2, okay? And now you're demoted to fighting the number 2 after getting those cat cheeks clapped by the funny cartoon man. So yeah, looking at Kizaru and then like looking at NL or Eniru, and this is a big technicality, but it's very interesting. So you know when I said both here and in my 1093 video that Kizaru's duplication was the first time a Logia ever shown that sort of ability at all? Well, that is technically untrue. You see, there was a television special, well, a special event, I should say, that was called Kyotai Panic Adventure Returns. This was an animated special shown at the Fuji TV headquarters to commemorate their 45th anniversary. And the one we're focusing on, the one that premiered in 2004, featured some very interesting Shonen Jump characters. The two that we're focusing on now are, well, Goku, Luffy, and Enel, or Eniru. In that TV special, Enel could duplicate himself. And when Luffy tried to punch him, said duplicates would vanish into electricity. Then, and it was finished off by Kamehameha, but that's not the important part. The important part is that just like Kizaru's clones here, who vanish into light, we've seen that ability before in very unusual circumstances, but it has happened in the franchise. I just don't think it's canon. But seeing as how Kizaru is doing a similar thing here, it's a canonical possibility, let's say. So NL has been him for years, for decades at this point. Do not count NL out. But let's continue. He destroyed an island. We have Logias that have terraformed an island by fighting. That's cool. We have Logias who stop the weather. That's cool. But to terraform an island is nothing compared to atomizing an island. And if what I think the Mother Flame is, if that has anything to do with Kizaru, they're very evenly matched. And really the only reason why NL lost was because of matchup. Because he you know what's weird too about him, unlike Caribou, and Peckham's mentions this, Logias who rely on their ability alone get folded. NL's not in that category because he had observation hockey and was using it very well in tandem with his Devil Fruit, which is something that Logias just don't do. Unless you're a smoker and your fruit has no offensive applications, so you have to rely on fisticuffs and a cheating weapon, which is just tipped with sea stone. So he just cheats, basically, because he's trash. But yeah, other than Blackbeard, which Blackbeard we have to see more of, because Blackbeard now it seems to be doing the heavy lifting after acquiring the Quake fruit is the Quake fruit. The Darkness fruit just seems to be able to level the playing field so he can body somebody with a tremor. That's what it kind of is seeming like. So he can get past all these cheating awakenings like what he did with Law. But I'm not going to really speak on Blackbeard yet, because we haven't seen enough of him for me to make a just decree. However, Kizaru is like leagues and bounds above his contemporaries. The cloning bit alone is crazy, and I don't think people understand how crazy it is. If he can make himself his own pacifista firing brigade, that is insane. Mind you, a simple kick can blow up one of those giant trees from Shibane Archipelago. This is nutty. Nobody but NL is really messing with that. And you know what's so interesting about NL too? NL is the only one who has a variety of different complex constructs. Now, back in the day when your boy was on various forums and whatnot, I was under the impression that having all these complex constructs were a sign that you were just of a higher crest than your contemporaries, right? In being a Logia user. I'm still sticking with that, because that on top of Amaru, which could be an awakening, I don't know, but I think seeing as how that's so unique, and seeing as how we've only seen that like one other time with Caesar, who may also be awakened, that's very believable. I think that that is very possible for both NL and Caesar Clown. I did a video about all this. I'll put like a thing here. But yeah, now thinking about Logias in general, okay, if we go by the whole Vegapunk thing about how fruits come into existence via the thoughts and wishes of people, and presumably the perceptions of people when you're talking about various subjects, right? If that's the case, all the Logia fruits are a person's perception of that element. So whatever the human perception of light is, Kizaru must have that down pat, because goodness gracious, if it's innovation, if it's just like aha eureka, like you get the cartoon light bulb above your head, if that's all light is, he's got the ingenuity, because he's doing it, which that's very funny that I would say that, seeing as how we're fighting on the island of ideas, an island ran by a giant brain, but that's beside the point. The point is that Kizaru is him. Kizaru is him. NL is him. Okay? I don't care about NL's defeat against Luffy. That's beside the point. Ain't nobody doing the stuff these two are doing. No one's doing it. And then just the level of dispersal is interesting, because NL could just zap away from places in an instant. Kizaru, in his first showing on Shibane Archipelago, when he's bisected by Apu, he does the most disturbing regeneration we've ever seen. Okay, so he's bisected, right? The legs stand up and then the rest of the body just piles onto the legs. That is awful. It's awful, it's creepy, but it's very interesting because no one else is depicted in that way. Not really. Not even Solid Man Kuzan. I mean, he comes out of a big, like, sheet of ice all creepily. That's kind of sick, but he never has this level of control. Kizaru is nothing but control. And we've seen this in every instance he's been in. I don't think he's been serious one time. The only time he's ever been put in a precarious predicament is Film Red, which is not canon. At least I don't think it's canon. Maybe parts are, like Uta. I can't tell you. But for all intents and purposes, that's not canon. Okay? So in terms of just flat manga and I guess bits of the anime, he has never been challenged. And it shows that here because he's not fazed by Luffy. Kaido is freaking out. Like, what are you? What is this? He's doing all of that. But Kizaru's like, oh, all right, I'll kick you away. Oh, you're back. Oh, all right, I'll fight you again. It's very casual, which is very interesting. But that's why I've always been on the side of he probably really is like the Shadow Fleet Admiral, and everybody else is just kind of playing the game by the rules that have been forced upon them. Garp wasn't. Garp most likely wasn't. Sengoku probably knew things were going on. But Kizaru, no. Kizaru is him. And then two, one thing that keeps sticking out of my mind is that Kizaru is the only one depicted as a child with reading books. He's the only one depicted with any sort of education. That's weird. That's just weird when you consider that every other admiral that we've seen has been kind of a ruffian and a vagabond. I guess besides Sengoku, who was, if I recall, practicing calligraphy. So it shows that he does have some sort of formal education, which is cool, which makes sense because he's the tactician. His code name is the Buddha, so makes sense. And then he presumably has a Doa fruit that gives him greater wisdom and intelligence because it is a human fruit. Don't know that for sure, but I could believe that being the case. I don't really see any Logia presently that matches up in terms of destructive power and skill when it comes to Kizaru and Enel. I'll make a small exception for Caesar, but Caesar is more about ingenuity as opposed to power. It's more of like he understands how gas works because he's a big fart. No, he understands how gas works because he's a chemist and a scientist. So it makes sense for his character because his fruit is more of a thinking man's game as opposed to being a military sort of forced game like it is with Kizaru, or he's not like inundated with like a weird deity complex like NL. And with NL, it's more of like he's talented with hockey, but it's also he believes himself to be a deity, therefore it is so. And I think that's why he's so good at what he does, because I say this again, he's the only antagonist who doesn't have his dreams crushed. He's like, I met that weird rubber freak. Well, I'm glad that's over. I'm going to the fairyverse. Bye. That's basically what it is. Undeterred, unbothered. He just gets on his ship and flies into the sky. Like, I did find that golden bell, but that was just kind of a trophy for me, so whatever. Bye. It's very funny. It's very simple. But yeah, I think that's why he's kind of held over, because really he is one of the strongest. And now, given how things have gone, I don't think that 500 million berry thing suits him. He'd probably be like 2 or 3 billion, honestly. Like, I don't think Kizaru is worth 3 crowns. I think he's probably worth 4 to 5 because he's too much of a threat. He's just too much. But that's all I have for you today. Kizaru is him. Give me your thoughts.